Welcome back to the program, Mom. Zev Brenner. It's been a while, but we know it's going to be close to the spring season when we have Trudy Stern on. She's co-president of Norpac together with her husband, Stanley. She's also, that's Norpac, New York, and she's also a chair of the Norpac mission, which takes place every year. So, Trudy, good to have you back again. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us, Zev. Really good to be back on the program.
Good to have you too. So Norpac does an amazing work because throughout the year they're a bipartisan group working with candidates from all different spheres of life to make sure that they have the message of how important the American-Israeli alliance is. With COVID for the last 2 years, I know it's been hard because usually there's one day we have about 12, 13, 1,400 people go to Washington, meet with every senator, every congressman. And with COVID, that was difficult for you. So you did a virtual. I understand you're doing virtual again this year.
That's right. So actually, what we thought was going to be very difficult ended up being really fantastic. So yes, in the past, our in-person missions, which we did every year and included about 1,400 pro-Israel advocates from the New York, New Jersey area going down to DC to advocate for Israel with, members of Congress. We always had about 90% of members of Congress meeting with our small groups. We were very, very nervous about how it was going to work virtually this past year. And much to our satisfaction, it worked out amazingly well. The things that we were concerned with in advance had to do with logistics. So logistically, to set up, one of the big questions we had was whether or not we were going to allow the members of Congress to send us a Zoom link, or whether or not we were going to provide the Zoom link for each one of our 550 meetings. We opted to do the Zoom link ourselves and provide that to the members of Congress. That, by the way, is very expensive to do, but we did that. And we hired a tech team to actually set the Zoom IDs up. And then we had one of those members of the tech team on every one of the 550 Zooms. In the end, it went very well, really swimmingly. Our apprehension as to whether or not members of Congress would click on the link at the appointed time was baseless. They all did. We didn't have any meetings, not one, where a member of Congress did not click on the link. We also did not have any technical glitches whatsoever. So that was very remarkable, I could say.
You had a good team.
Yes, we had a great team. So that worked out amazingly well. The idea of having a Zoom week, virtual mission week, as opposed to a virtual mission day. So traditionally, we would go down to DC for one day, bus down, bus home. Very long day, but it was one day. We decided that we were going to do it over the course of a week, because with Zoom, you have that, if you're not going and it's virtual, why not make it convenient for members of Congress as well as the participants, but really it was members of Congress. So if a member couldn't meet on Tuesday, we were very vigilant and we said, okay, how's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday for you? What time works? And we were able to get the same 90% of Senate and Congress to meet with us. And actually, we were able to get more members themselves as opposed to staffers meet with us, because we actually even asked that further question. We would like to meet the member themselves. And if they're not available on Wednesday, how about Thursday, Tuesday, or Monday? So the net result was that we had many more members themselves as opposed to staffers meeting with our groups. And that was really great.
And in order to tell everyone what happens is the way Norpac operates, and I've taken my kids on a few of the Norpac missions. You go down to Washington and you have a small group meet with almost every senator, almost every congressman. And if they're not there, they meet with the aides, and you present them the importance of the American Jewish alliance, but also whatever is hot at that time. I'm sure this year there'll be a lot of hot button issues. We'll talk about that. But that's why it's so important. And the fact that you got actual congressmen and senators as opposed to their aides with this Zoom sessions. So let me ask you this question, Trudy: will we ever go back to face if Zoom's working so well?
Good question, Zev. So yes, we are planning on going back because there is no substitute for seeing somebody in person. There's really no substitute. But I think we're going to do a hybrid. We were just discussing this. We were going to do a 1 day down, and those members that for whatever reason couldn't meet on that day, we were going to do virtual to the other days of the week. So like we're very vigilant. You can't meet with us Tuesday. When can you meet with us? We're available. We want to talk to you. When can you meet? And so I think, Zoom is going to become very much a tool that's here to stay in terms of, enhancing whatever experiences we used to have. So that is what we're looking at.
No, it's so important. Every year I say this, but every year, unfortunately, it doesn't change. We always say this year is a critical year. It's so important that we be in touch with our elected officials. This year, I think it's critically important because what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening now with Iran back and being re-engaged with the United States and the war in Ukraine. So it's super important. There's a lot to talk about when the members of Norpac get together with members of Congress.
There really is a lot to talk about. I mean, just to explain to the listeners for just a moment how the Norpac mission works for those people who haven't been on the mission. So Norpac is a political action committee, and as such, we raise money for candidates, and our one hot button issue is members of Congress that are supportive of the Israel-America relationship, a strong Israel-America relationship. So throughout the year, we have parlor meetings where we give our support in the way of money and dollars so that these senators and congressmen can effectively run their races. They need the dollars to do that. They also need to hear what the issues are from us, from the pro-Israel community, in small, intimate settings where they can hear what is our concerns and in very, very much detail how it affects Israel. And in addition, it's always really important to thank members of Congress for their support. So that this coming Sunday, I am hosting in my home Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. She is the Republican senator from Alaska, very strong on Israel issues. She's in cycle. She's running now. And, we will be meeting her in our home with 50 other pro-Israel advocates who will be supporting her. So that's one thing that Norpac does. And incidentally, we are the PAC that raises the most dollars for pro-Israel candidates. So we're extremely important, and I'm very privileged and honored to be part of it.
It's a great group. Do people confuse you with Norpac with APAC? You get
Yes,
that?
always. Actually, that's my most common question.
Number one question.
Number one. There you go. So yes, they do confuse us with APAC a lot. We are very different than APAC, although APAC has been shifting in what their role
now
is.
becoming a political action committee, I think, aren't they shifting a little
Right.
bit?
I mean, they have congressional clubs all over the country, and I think they're going to be working with them, following the Norpac model more, because the Norpac is so incredibly strong and important to the Israel-America relationship, and has proven so in all sorts of unbelievably important issues, starting with Iron Dome resupply and support for Israel with regard to the money that's given to Israel every single year. So our relationships, Norpac's relationships with members of Congress have proven so incredibly important that I think other groups are trying to follow that model. And I think that's great because we need all hands on deck. I think it's fantastic.
No, it's important. It's so important what Norpac does, and this year especially so. But how do you navigate the fact that there's a different tone in Washington? Everything's so partisan, and there's a lot of enmity and hatred and bitterness going on different sides of the aisle. How do you navigate that? Because if they figure you're Republican leaning, the Democrats could be upset, and if the vice versa. So how do you get around that?
So it's a great question, and I myself like I've been involved with pro-Israel advocacy and Norpac for about 15 years. And there has been a tremendous, tremendous shift in the feelings towards Israel and the attitude towards Israel, tremendously so. So that I used to go down to DC over the past 15 years, and you'd walk into almost every senator or congressperson's office, and the answer would be, "You're preaching to the choir. Let's talk about something else because you're preaching to the choir. I vote for Israel. Israel's so important to America's security for so many reasons. Let's move. Let's talk about, do you have children? How many kids do you have?" And it was a very nice and very wonderfully warm, fun sort of thing. Today, it's so different. New members of Congress do not have that feeling towards Israel. They are not immediately predisposed towards being pro-Israel at all. The reasons to be pro-Israel, I think, are very clear. Having a democratic partner in the region is critical to America. If America did not have Israel there, America would have to have boots on the ground, meaning tremendous cost of personal life as well as tremendous amount of money, hundreds of billions of dollars when you have a presence in another country. So America has a tremendous benefit from being an ally with Israel and relying on Israel. So that understanding was always there and always understood. And senators and congresspeople knew that, and they got it, and they realized that. Today, it's not like that. Today, you walk into these offices, if they are poisoned by the squad from the get-go, there's just an inherent distrust for Israel, an inherent anti-Semitic flavor going into some offices. And we've tried to work with those members, actually. We don't give up. We do try to work with them. It is difficult. It is very difficult. But then I had an incredible experience last mission, actually, when on a Zoom mission with a congressman from Iowa. New freshman member, was in the military, so he's a vet. Most of the time, veterans understand the importance of Israel because they've served in the region and they really understand how valuable Israel is. So he was a Republican veteran, really predisposed to being a friend towards Israel. And he asked me, he said, "Let me ask you something, Trudy." So I'm new. I walk along the halls of Congress, and people come up to me, and they're very reasonable, with a very reasonable perspective. They say to me, "Listen, we also think that we should be supporting Israel, but not unconditionally. Look, when America gives money to countries all over the world, they have a right to know the type of, the type of country they're giving it to, and they have the right to know what the money is being used for, and they have the right to condition that." And he said to me, "It sounds very reasonable." It really does. It sounds very reasonable. Like, we don't want to be giving money to the Palestinians for their terrorist operations. So when you say it in the flip about Israel, he said it sounds reasonable. But I know it can't be, because I know the people who are saying it to me, like the AOC, the Rashida Tlaib, the Omar, who are saying it to me, are inherently anti-Semitic. So there has to be something I'm missing. So could you enlighten me? And we spent the whole Zoom mission meeting talking about how valuable Israel is to America and how conditional aid would be so detrimental, and that it shouldn't, and why that should not take place, and the difference between conditioning aid to Israel and conditioning aid to the Palestinians. And at the end, he goes, "This has been so helpful. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that we've had this meeting. And now I understand, and I want you to understand how educating members of Congress is so critical, and what you do is so critical, because I'm pro-Israel, but I would not have known what conditional aid meant." So thank you so much.
So you're basically giving a reason why it's so important to be in touch with members of Congress. We're speaking with Trudy Stern. She, together with her husband, are co-presidents of Norpac, New York. She's also a chair of the Norpac mission, which takes place every year. This squad, there are about 6 of them that are in Congress that are anti-Israel, including AOC of New York, and I'm talking about Ilhan Omar and Ayanna Pressley of Massachusetts, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan. So, does Norpac meet with them as well?
So we would be willing to meet with anyone. We've met with other members that you did not list, who
Like
I,
Bernie, like Bernie Sanders or
well,
Elizabeth
like
Warren?
Jamal Bowman, like Jamal Bowman, who, is a sheep in wolf's clothing. And, a person who we've tried to work with members of Congress. We talk to them, we talk reasonably, but look, it's, very simple. People experience this throughout their lives. Somebody doesn't want to like you, they don't like you. They don't like you, so you say something that's funny, they don't laugh. That's just the way it is.
But did they go through the pretense of meeting with you or trying to have their staff meet with you, or didn't even go through the pretense?
Some of them do. Yes, some of them do.
Where they'll actually meet with you, or they'll have their staff meet with you?
They'll have staff meet with us.
They themselves won't. Like Elizabeth Warren, I don't think meets with you.
No, I can't remember. I think we've met with Elizabeth Warren over the years. That she's a little different than the, Ilhan Omar flavor, I would say.
And AOC?
What?
AOC, I would assume that AOC may want to meet with you.
Well, because we're constituents, some of us. I'd have to look that up, Zev. I don't remember. It wasn't my meeting personally, so I don't remember if she was one of the people who met or it was her staffer. But staffers are good too. I mean, staffers are really important because they are the hands, eyes, ears of the member of Congress. A member of Congress needs the staffers in order to give them the information and guidance. So staffers are really important also.
They are important, but I would assume in the case of some of the squad, some of them may have me with the staffers to sort of say, hey, we're playing ball with you, but we're not really playing ball. They just pass the buck, so to speak. In other cases where they're busy, the staffers, I think, are standing in. In this case, I might suspect that they're looking just as to play the game, but not really be too involved.
I think you're right about that, Zev. I do.
It doesn't take away from that. It still is important to meet with them, and you never know where you make a responsive core. Maybe he or she has a good idea. Maybe I should think about it. You never know, so it's always worthwhile to talk to them. But we live in challenging times, that's for sure. How many people do you expect to go virtually this year to participate in Norpac's mission?
Well, last year we had 550 participants, and when we go down to DC, we typically have a lot of students and a lot of parents and students, grandparents and students coming along. We love that. The members of Congress love that. They love having students and kids, and they really do like mentoring children and kids. We didn't have children, I'm sorry, we had high school kids. But so that demographic did not participate because it was during the day. So it was, not possible for kids who are in school to participate.
Unless you make it a school activity.
Right. But we were really we really were in uncharted waters, and we really weren't sure how Zoom would work, having not fully engaged people on these Zooms. So we were really looking for a leadership type of group, people who are very committed and passionate, and people who understood the issues and had gone on the mission before, or not, but were, knew how to really advocate. And we had an amazing group of 550 people who were committed and passionate and very good at what they were advocating for. We do, like, as you said, we have talking points. Every year our mission has talking points. We don't just, go in rogue without, without a direction. This is a very scripted mission, because that's the only way that you could actually accomplish the most that we need to accomplish for Israel. So we have talking points. We have 4 talking points. 4 talking points that are coordinated with the pro-Israel community across the country as to what is the most important 4 hot button issues facing Israel at that moment. We do that so that we can amplify the voice, so that the same issues are being repeated, so that they are understood and known to be very important. And we train everybody on those issues. So if you sign up for the mission, and we hope every listener that's listening right now does sign up for the mission, you will get a link to a training session, and you'll also get a link to the talking points that you'll print out and read, and you'll be fully trained on those 4 issues, so that when you go into these Zoom meetings, they're not unscripted. They are very scripted, and they are very organized, so that you are able to ask for 4 things. And they're almost always connected to pieces of legislation. So will you sign on to bill number 132? And explain why that's really important. So last year, sorry, just one more second. But last year, our mission took place right around when all of the conflict was happening in Israel, and a lot of anti-Semitism was happening across the country. And it made for an extremely passionate group of pro-Israel advocates, and it was very topical. So you were able to talk about that also, as to why these 4 talking points are so important, and talk about the current events. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Zev.
No, but I was just saying, I have another listen. The going to Washington via Zoom is great. I just have another reason why also it's important to be there. When they're here, 1,400 people come to Washington to lobby for Israel. It has an impact too, saying, look, these are so many people taking time out of their busy work. They're lawyers, doctors, educators, professionals, students that are taking time. It makes an impact. So each person has a greater influence beyond being that just a one person when they look at them. You have a similar thing on Zoom, but on that aspect, I think being there in person sends a different message. So
that is very right. It actually, that has been quantified in numbers as to, you send an email, it has X amount of value. And they say actually going down to DC and meeting with a member of Congress is equivalent to something like 10,000 emails, because it is really understood that if somebody is willing to give up their job for the day and come down to DC with expenses, that it's so important to them that they value that a lot. I don't think that, so we actually really considered whether or not we were going to do it in person this year. This was a very big debate that we had. The problem with doing it in person right now is that the way it works in DC is, if you go to visit a member of Congress, the office that you're visiting has to send an individual down to the front of the building to escort you up. So that's really difficult. I mean,
is that because of security, or it has to do with COVID?
COVID.
And everybody has to be, of course, be vaccinated to get into the building and show proof of vaccination, which creates another logistical nightmare when you're putting something together. Understood. But for the future, like you said, a hybrid might be a good thing. Get 1,400 people to come and have a bunch of 500 more people on Zoom. That would be the ideal situation. So,
I agree.
Trudy, tell us, when is this Zoom week where people can go and help Israel and advocate for Israel? It's over a 4-day period. Let's get the dates and let's get the information how people can really participate.
Right. So the week is Monday, May 9th to Thursday, May 12th. I really am begging all of your listeners, if you're really interested in helping Israel, there is nothing more important that you can do than advocating with members of Congress for Israel. I mean, to begin with, Israel appropriates $3.8 billion a year. It's 3.3 in weapons defense, and then an additional 500 million in Iron Dome missile resupply. So, I mean, if you think about your time and how you're spending it, you are contributing to $3.8 billion in aid to Israel. And, you can go to a parlor meeting for a school or, in Israel and contribute $100. But here, and that's so important, you can contribute $1,000 or whatever you're going to contribute. But here, the Senate and Congress appropriates $3.8 billion. So exponentially, your time is very valuable here. It's also very interesting. It's super interesting work. You see all these people on television, on Fox, on CNN, on MSNBC, talking about different issues, being interviewed. And here you have the opportunity to have a Zoom with them. Usually, to have that type of access to a member of Congress, it would require you contributing a lot of money. But here, for the mere price of, if you sign up early, $136, you can actually interface with a member of Congress. And that's unbelievably interesting.
And help Israel, of course.
And of course.
So where do people go to sign up?
So it's $136 if you sign up before March 13th. That's the early bird special, and that's per family. If you sign up after that, then the price goes up to $180, and that's per family. I want to just mention, Zev, that Norpac is made up of lay leaders. They are not paid professionals. We are all volunteers. So when you're contributing, to a member of Congress in a person's home, every dollar that you contribute goes to that member of Congress. There is no overhead. We are all volunteers. I myself am a volunteer. I'm a lawyer. I have a law firm. My husband isn't, has a job, but we volunteer. Dr. Ben Choake is a doctor. He is the president of all of Norpac and has been for a very long time. And we all can, and Lori Baumel is a scientist, and Jeff Schreiber, one of our, and Alan Lieberman these are lawyers. We all contribute, and Dave Steinberg. I don't want to miss anyone because I don't want to leave anyone off, because everyone contributes so much of their time that could be spent working. We all have jobs, we all work, we do this as a labor of love. So if you pay $136, you're actually, there's no overhead. It's because we hire a tech team to help us with the logistics of the Zoom. We hire that for the mission, and we actually ended up taking a loss, but we don't care. We just pay that out of our own pockets. The people who are super involved. And if you actually wanted to be a sponsor and help us with those costs, that's totally appreciated as well.
So let's give the information again where people can go to be part of this mission. And you can be part of Norpac all year long. They have parlor meetings throughout the year. So if you can't do it this week, there are plenty of where you can actually meet congressmen and senators in person in your community. Let's give out the info.
So you can go to norpac.net to sign up for the mission, or you can call and you can speak to Avi. And the phone number is...
They're calling already.
Sorry. 201-788-5133.
Let's give out the number one more time.
201-788-5133. We have very exciting, like before, as opposed to the mission, in addition to the mission, we need all of you to come on the mission, all of you to call in or go onto the internet today and sign up. We need advanced time on this because we need to be able to set up the small groups. What I didn't explain was you're broken up into, we get the full group of 550 people, and we break them into groups of 4 or 5 people who then communicate with one another and go over the talking points and script the actual meetings that they're going to have. So, and because it was on Zoom, usually when you go down in person, you have 3 or 4 meetings, but on Zoom, people ended up with 7 or 8 meetings. And that's really fascinating throughout the week. It's a phenomenally interesting experience. Coming up as live events in our homes. So I just was in Dr. Ben Choake's house with Senator Jackie Rosen, who is a Democrat, fantastic on Israel. very interesting to speak to her and, hear from her about, the environment, exactly what you asked me, Zev. How does it, what is it like in Senate right now? Um, being a pro-Israel Democrat, that was very fascinating. And then, of course, talking about what's going on in Ukraine and what can be done
It's
to
so
help.
important what
To
you're
help.
doing. So, Trudy Stern, I want to thank you for the work and effort that you and your colleagues and your husband, Stanley, who happened to meet in Shul Shabbos this past week. Great team, and you have a wonderful group of people that are dedicated to helping Israel as part of Norpac, and the Norpac mission is coming up starting May 9th. And please get involved, whether it's for this mission or throughout the year. They do such important work for all of us. It's not just for Israel, it's for America. A strong Israeli-American alliance is so essential to the United States that we continue that, especially in the dangerous world that we're in. So, Trudy, thank you for your service and look forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Zev. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you do.
And we're going to be right back. You're listening to the Talkline Network, and we're looking at Norpac, a wonderful, wonderful organization.